There is a very easy way to absolutely break ESPN Fantasy Football and give yourself a huge leg up on every single other person in your league. Pretty much the strategy is just going to be, instead of looking at whatever app's ADP that you're drafting on, whether that is ESPN or otherwise, you're going to look at Underdog's ADP instead. So what I've gone ahead and done is I've written down all of ESPN's ADP by position and then compared it to Underdog's ADP and then subtracted to bring everyone watching this video the best values on ESPN and the worst values on ESPN according to the Underdog ADP. Now, the reasons why we want to go off of Underdog ADP instead of ESPN or a different app's ADP is because Underdog is sharper. There is the most money being drafted on Underdog, which attracts the sharpest drafters. That's reason number one. Reason number two, there's drafting going on 24/7 and the ADP is constantly updating up to the minute, which makes it more accurate with current events and anything that's going on. But the most important thing is the guys are sharper. So listen to the Underdog ADP. It's better than ESPN ADP. One last thing, Underdog drafts are half PPR and you have to start 3 wide receivers. So the overall number of how high guys are being drafted, it is a little bit different, but I didn't even look at that. I only looked at the number, so the position rank where guys are going off the board. So like Justin Jefferson, I looked at him as just wide receiver 3, not player 5 or whatever he's going off on Underdog. So those different strategic things on Underdog are not going to play a factor in this video. It is not going to mess up the data. The only thing that can happen is if someone is a PPR monster like a Josh Downs, he's going to be a little bit lower on Underdog where he should be in full PPR leagues. But let's just hop into our first set of data here. First, we're going to start off with the quarterbacks. As you can see, our number 1 values are both Drake Maye and Geno Smith, both being ranked 5 spots higher on Underdog than they are on ESPN. Drake Maye is easily the number 1 guy because unless you're playing in a Superflex league, Geno Smith is not someone you are most likely drafting. He is probably going to be on waivers for you. He was quarterback 13 last season, so we can't ignore Geno Smith, but he's not someone that we are extremely interested in drafting. Trevor Lawrence and Anthony Richardson are also going off the board higher than on Underdog than on ESPN, but I do have to say with Anthony Richardson, he is dropping as we speak. Our next group, Bryce Young, Michael Penix Jr., Russell Wilson, all soft values, although the only one you should really be drafting is Bryce Young because he has rushing upside while those other 2 quarterbacks don't. Let's talk about the worst possible values here. The worst picks on ESPN, pretty much don't take rookie quarterbacks on ESPN. If we look at all the bad values, it's Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, Shedeur Sanders, Jalen Milroe makes up 4 of the worst 6 picks on ESPN at the quarterback position. They're all rookies. Don't overthink it. Just don't draft rookies. Casual drafters on ESPN are getting excited to draft the new quarterbacks. They're excited that they can finally get an opportunity to draft these guys that they loved watching in college. But smarter Underdog drafters are understanding that these guys probably aren't going to be very effective in fantasy football, at least as rookies. But the 2 veterans in this group are going to be, first of all, Justin Herbert, where veteran drafters understand that Justin Herbert is on an extremely run-heavy offense, so we're not expecting him to come out with a very high-scoring season. Coming off the board at quarterback 11 on ESPN, he is absolutely replaceable. What is really the difference between Trevor Lawrence at quarterback 23 and Justin Herbert at quarterback 11 other than the price? Real life, Herbert's a lot better. Fantasy football-wise, either one of those guys can give you a better week, and neither one of those guys really should be your quarterback 1. As far as it goes for Matthew Stafford, he has a back issue. He only just started practicing this week. If he's having a back issue in training camp, how do you think his back's going to hold up week 1 before he gets drafted? Or before he hasn't even taken a single hit yet. My point, he hasn't even taken a single hit yet, and he's not healthy. So how can you expect him to be healthy when the actual season starts and he starts taking real hits? But like I said before, number 1 value when it comes to quarterbacks on ESPN using this strategy is going to be Drake Maye. He was only quarterback 23 last season, but a lot of experts are very high on Drake Maye. They think with the addition of new head coach Mike Vrabel, the offense is going to be a lot better. And the reports coming out of training camp from the New England Patriots is the fact that Drake Maye is expected to get a lot more called, designed runs for him. He already ran for a touchdown in the preseason. We can expect more from Drake Maye come his second year in the NFL for fantasy football. Now, moving on to our top running back values using this strategy. Going to start off with this, the exact opposite from the quarterback position. We do want to be targeting running backs. We have RJ Harvey, Trayvon Henderson, Omarion Hampton, and Caleb Johnson make up 4 of the top 5 values on ESPN. Now, if we want to, the way we interpret that is maybe ESPN drafters haven't actually determined how valuable these rookie running backs are going to be. RJ Harvey is a guy who I have identified looking at historical data and trends when it comes to the running back position. RJ Harvey is someone who does everything that we're looking for a rookie running back prospect to do in college. He caught the ball. He has a great BMI. You can see 5'8", 205 pounds. That's what we're looking for. He can handle a 3-down workload because of that weight. He ran really fast. He tested well. RJ Harvey is someone that I am all in on. Do not pay attention to where he is on the current Broncos depth chart. Sean McVay puts everyone lower down on the depth chart when they are a rookie. If we want to look at the bad values in terms of running backs, it's going to be Javonte Williams, my number 1 drafted guy on Underdog, is coming in as the worst pick via this strategy, but he's going off the board on Underdog at a way too low 41. That's why he is being flagged with this strategy. He's going way too far down the board on Underdog, and Javonte Williams is someone that you need to be loading up on. The next 2 guys, the next 2 worst picks, Cam Scadaboo and Joe Mixon. These are 2 guys who are currently dealing with injuries, and the general public has not caught on to how bad these injuries historically are. Joe Mixon still is not healthy from last year. Do not draft Joe Mixon. Cam Scadaboo only had his preseason debut last night. A lower body soft tissue injury is something that, for a running back, tends to hold guys out for longer. It tends to keep coming back up. It tends to linger. Makes me lower on Scadaboo, but at running back 36, I'm close to in. Would like to see him drop a little bit farther than that. Aaron Jones, Alvin Kamara, 2 guys that, they're slightly bad values, but the one that we have to bring up is Ramondre Stevenson. He's going to be a 1B on an offense that is not guaranteed to be a very strong offense. I do not want to be drafting Ramondre Stevenson, even if the New England Patriots will be using him with the starters when everyone's healthy. Now, moving on to our next position, we have our wide receivers, where there is a screaming value. It is going to be Teteroa McMillan coming off the board on ESPN at wide receiver 33, Underdog as wide receiver 19. The reason why I love Teteroa McMillan is because there are a ton of targets to go around that Carolina Panthers wide receiver room. If you watch any of Teteroa McMillan in the preseason, him and Bryce Young already have a great connection, and this is someone who could be a PPR monster. I'm expecting him to be the next Drake London. Both players drafted with the 7th overall draft pick, and both guys with similar builds, very good prospects. Don't overthink it. If Bryce Young has a crazy breakout, Teteroa McMillan is going to be his number 1 wide receiver, and that may even lead to as high of a fantasy football finish as wide receiver 12 for Teteroa McMillan. Absolutely all in on him. Let's keep going down the boards. Juwan Jennings is a great value on Underdog. People are on ESPN. People have forgotten how well Juwan Jennings ended last season. There are a ton of injuries to that San Francisco 49ers wide receiver room. Juwan Jennings, when he comes back from his calf injury, there will be more targets for him. Next, we have Emeka Egbuka coming off the board at wide receiver 48 on ESPN. The ESPN ADP has not yet reacted to the amazing rise of Emeka Egbuka. He is absolutely flying up experts' draft boards. Casuals on ESPN have not caught on, but that is someone you want to make sure you have a lot of. Emeka Egbuka is going to have a fantastic season. Marvin Harrison Jr. and George Pickens, both very similar players. They are very boom or bust, but they are both values on ESPN. Chris Olave is another guy who is a value. At wide receiver 40, I know he has concussion issues. I know he has no quarterback, but we know how talented of a player Chris Olave is. Go draft him confidently at wide receiver 40. Even take him a little bit higher than that. Our worst values on ESPN, Cooper Kupp. People are very familiar with the name, but Cooper Kupp is getting very close to the end of his career. We are not expecting a huge season for Cooper Kupp, joining a very run-heavy offense with the Seattle Seahawks. Yes, they have a new quarterback in Sam Darnold, but we're going to have to see what that offense actually looks like. Preseason, they were very run-heavy. They have both Kenneth Walker III and Zach Charbonnet. They're going to want to run the football a ton. Zay Flowers is a talented wide receiver who, unfortunately, doesn't score a ton of fantasy points. Wide receiver 23 is just way too high. He doesn't have the ceiling to outperform that, which is why I do not want to take Zay Flowers as high as he is currently going off the board. Chris Godwin, he's injured. People have not adjusted to it enough. DK Metcalf, Keon Coleman, Jerry Jeudy. These are all guys who, yes, they have some talent. Keon Coleman didn't put up enough yards as a rookie to suggest success going forwards. DK Metcalf, no number one option for what is maybe going to be a good quarterback with Aaron Rodgers. The problem with DK Metcalf is he's on the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're not going to throw the ball a lot. I imagine him to be wide receiver 23 to 28, but going off the board at wide receiver 19, don't take that. Jerry Jeudy last season was only relevant when Jameis Winston was the quarterback. Jerry Jeudy does not have Jameis Winston anymore. He has Joe Flacco. Shadur Sanders. He doesn't have a good quarterback. Do not draft Jerry Jeudy. Matthew Golden is another guy who has pretty poor analytics when it comes to the wide receiver position, but not, all of these ADP discrepancies from the wide receiver position can pretty much be pretty easily explained away. Let's hop into our tight ends, and there is a red flag. There's a mistake on ESPN's ADP when it comes to tight ends. The number one thing that we have to point out is Mason Taylor coming off the board at tight end 198, which is just absolutely insane. He is the Jets' starting tight end, but he's coming off the board as the Jets' tight end 3. There's no rhyme or reason behind this. It is a glitch on the ESPN app. Make sure you're taking advantage of it. If you're not drafting in a league with Jets fans, no one's going to take Mason Taylor, but make sure that you are the guy that takes advantage of this mistake. Mason Taylor, great value. Brenton Strange, another great value because there is uncertainty. Last time the Jaguars had a pretty good tight end, it was Evan Ingram. He had great seasons. Brenton Strange, not as good, but there are a ton of vacated targets. Let's see what he can do. At tight end 29, I love taking that risk. Tight end 17, I'm still in on that, but that's a little bit dicier. Tight end 29, steal on ESPN. Tyler Warren, Mike Gesicki, and Terrence Ferguson are also some more values on ESPN. Going into our worst picks is going to be Cole Kmet, Pat Freiermuth, both historically pretty solid tight ends, but guys that now have a new tight end in their offense. Cole Kmet has Colson Loveland. Pat Freiermuth has Jonnu Smith. Both of these guys should be scoring less than they have in the past. Tyler Higbee is really, really old, although even at tight end 29, I don't play in any ESPN leagues where I would have to draft tight end 29. I think it's a pretty good value for him. I think people are sleeping on Tyler Higbee. Then Dalton Schultz and Chig Okonkwo, again, you really shouldn't be drafting these guys unless you're playing some sort of 2 tight end or crazy tight end premium. You shouldn't be really touching any of these guys other than David Njoku. And Njoku, I think you're drafting him at the top of a tier if you take him at tight end 8, but not even a bad value if you do want to take David Njoku here. I understand what the stats say with this strategy, but David Njoku still a very solid pick no matter what app you are drafting on, ESPN, Underdog, Sleeper, otherwise. But just remember, this doesn't just work on ESPN. Anytime you're drafting, just pull up Underdog's rankings. I promise you, those will be sharper rankings unless you have the rankings of an expert you trust. But if you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and thanks for watching.